mic and give me the answer. So the following is a two-way table showing the results for a sample of undergraduate students. So we have gender. So our two variables here are gender and GPA. So gender, we have males and females, and for GPA, we have under 2.0, 2.0 to 3.0, and over 3.0. The last row represents our totals for our GPA values. So I is a total for everybody who has a GPA under 2.0. G is a total for everybody who has a GPA between 2 to 3. And K is the total for everybody who has a GPA over 3.0. Then these two rows, well, the last column, these two rows, D and H, represents persons who are male and the amount of persons who are female. L is our overall total. So L represents our grand total. So the first question is that the quantity F over H represents what kind of probability? Is it a marginal probability, a conditional probability, or a joint probability? I'm going to put it back on the previous slide so you can see. So again, the quantity F over H represents what? If you guys can answer. So we're looking for what F divided by H represent. What would it represent? Would it represent a marginal probability, a joint probability, or a conditional probability? Is that somebody with an answer? Guys, what would F over H represent? Yeah, that's correct. So it would represent a conditional probability. Because remember that a conditional probability is the inside count divided by the outside count. And F in this case is the inside count for a female, and H is the total for being a female. So F is the inside count for being a female with a GPA between 2.3, 2.0 and 3.0 divided by the total, and it's conditional on the fact that you have, so the conditional would be that what is the probability that you have a 2.0 to 3.0 GPA given that you are female? So that's what the question is asking us. What's the probability that you have a GPA of 2.0 to 3.0 given that you're female? All right, so next question is the quantity A divided by L represents what? Does it represent a marginal probability, a joint probability, or a conditional probability? So we're looking at the second question now. So the quantity A divided by L. So A, so this is A. So A is the intersection between being a male and having a GPA under 2.0, and L is our grand total. So what does A over L represent? That's correct. It represents a joint probability. All right, then the last question, well, you guys should know the answer. The quantity H over L represents what? So we have H divided by L. What does it represent? Yeah, so H over L represents marginal because as before, marginal is the outside total and H is the outside total for being a female, while L is the grand total. All right, so that was easy. Next, we're going to be looking at the general, discrete, random variables, and probability distribution. So first, we're going to be looking at some definitions. So what is a random variable? So a random variable is a variable whose value is numerical outcome of a random phenomenon. What's a probability distribution? It is a mathematical function that assigns probabilities to the values of a random variable. So the probability distribution is where you would assign different probabilities to your different random variables. And you know we have two types of distribution, probability distribution. We have discrete, we have continuous. So a discrete probability distribution describes the probability of a discrete random variable at a point. And remember that a discrete variable or anything to do with discrete has to do with there's no decimal place, it's a whole number. So discrete probability distribution has to do with whole numbers. While a continuous probability distribution, so a discrete probability distribution will be like a binomial distribution, while a continuous probability distribution describes the probability of a continuous random variable over an area. And you know, an example of a continuous probability distribution would be a normal distribution where you know we can have decimals, while for discrete it's just a whole number. So now we're going to be looking at the properties of probability distribution functions. So one, each probability must be greater than so each probability distribution must be greater than or equal to 0. And you know that if a probability is equal to 0, it means it is uncertain for sure and the outcome, the event is impossible. Secondly, the sum of all we know that all probabilities must sum to 1. So when you have a distribution or anything, all your probabilities must be equal to 1. Thirdly, or expected value. The expected value on the probability distribution function is known as our mean, which is equal to x, the expected value of x, which is equal to mu, which is the sum of x times the probability of x. So the expected value is normally our average or mean, and it's calculated as the sum of x times the probability of x. Then we have our variance, which is sigma squared is equal to the expected value of x squared minus the expected value of x all squared, which represents the sum of x squared times the probability of x minus the sum of x times the probability of x all squared. And you know that in order to find your standard deviation, all you have to do is find the square root of the variance. It's just square root your variance. So once you find your variance, you just square root it and you get your standard deviation. So we're doing a question now. So this question says that the probability distribution for a random variable x is given by f of x, which is equal to 7 minus x divided by 10. X is equal to 3, 4, 5, 6. Use this to complete the table below. So the table below we have x. So this table that we're going to be completing. And then we have probability of x. So the first thing we have to do is we fill in our x values, which are 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we calculate our x values using the formula that we were given. So the probability that x is equal to 3 is just, all you're doing is just substituting the values of x into our original equation. So the probability that x is equal to 3 is equal to 7 minus 3 divided by 10, which is equal to 4 divided by 10. So the probability, so when x is equal to 3, the probability is going to be 4 divided by 10, or 0.4. Then the probability when x is equal to 4, again, we're just substituting the values of x into our formula. We get 7 minus 4 divided by 10, which is equal to 3 divided by 10. So the probability of x equals to 4 is equal to 3 divided by 10, or 0.4. X equals 5 is equal to 7 divided by 5, 7 minus 5 divided by 10, which is equal to 2 divided by 10. So when x is equal, the probability that coincides with that is going to be 2 divided by 10. Then we have the probability of x is equal to 6 is equal to 7 minus 6 divided by 10, which is equal to 1 over 10. So 6, when x is equal to 6, the probability is 1 over 10. To be sure that your probabilities are correct on the right part, because the sum of all probabilities must be equal to 1. All right, so we're looking at our first question. So it says that according to a study by a road safety interest group, the probability that speeding is a cause of a fatal crash is 0.3. Furthermore, the probability that speeding you could use decimal in place instead of the fraction. Like, I remember, when you're doing probability, you can either use decimal, fractions, or percentage. So yeah, you could use it in place.